Hey guys, so back again. It was really good to see you guys as always. I am always excited to see you guys, and you guys still look pretty freaked out, but a little bit more concentrated, a little more focused, a little calmer. So I'm glad to see that. I worry about you guys, but I have every faith that you can make it. Um, we're gonna talk about stores, which is going to be one of the most interesting parts of this discussion because it's really a culmination of all of these things I've been throwing at you for a couple of weeks now. If you're reading or keeping up with reading, we're into chapter 20. We're into volume 2, chapter 20. And this is going to. There's probably not a diagram necessarily for this because it is such a it's such a fluid, thing that as you think about the different retailers that you've seen and how they behave, a lot of this is going to change. The one thing that isn't going to change, that if you're not a math person, even if you are not a math person, the things that really affect stores kind of moving forward is going to be mathematical profit per square foot is going to be a huge part of the equation. All of this stuff is going to be really, really, really important. Profit per square foot will drive almost every decision that's being made out there now. What I would encourage you to do is if you look at Kohl's in the US, Kohl's is doing some significant rethinking around their space that they have. Macy's is doing the same thing. I'm pointing at US because their online business has probably taken off ahead of the Canadian ones. But how they think about stores and what they do with stores, will kind of reflect what happens here as well. If you are thinking about, the ones that you're going to want to think about, you know, think about, you want to look at Home Outfitters. Home Outfitters is, Home Outfitters, which is part of the HPC group, which you guys all know about, and there's a group who's studying this. So profit per square foot for these guys has dropped significantly, and that's driving the closure of Home Outfitters. And in that is it's the equation for Home Outfitters is things like real estate cost, number of SKUs, right, on shelf, and then profit, profit per SKU. So when you look at these kind of three factors in here, it didn't make sense because on the other side of this, I guess the equation should be the other way, but it's this math equation. In order for them to stay in business, they've got to be greater than the Amazon threat, the Walmart threat, and the dollar store. And so house goods is a really good, kind of example of this. Is when you look at dollar stores and all these guys, you look at what Home Outfitter sells. There's probably a tiny, tiny portion. In terms of percentage of SKUs, if Home Outfitters had, let's say, on average, they've got 45,000 SKUs, there's probably somewhere less than 10%. So probably, let's say, 4,500 codes, which are actually profitable for them. And so you really look at the only way that Home Outfitter might be able to stay open is if they divided their shelf space or their real estate by 90%, basically, if they reduced it by 90%, and that would help them stay open. When you go into this and you think about all the different formats that we've got, stores are really going to be something that you've got to you think of all the models. So this is where some of the things that we've talked about so far in terms of operations and the way you go about your business, the way the way you culminate your business, a lot of that comes into play here. And so some of this math equation will also lead, someone like Old Navy to have that kind of disparate retail pricing that they had before. You're going to see some of that here. And so retail is really, physical retail is trying to find its way into balancing out e-commerce. Part of this equation is you've got a classic store. We talked about online, offline, and so if your store is a square and you've kind of got, before you might have allocated 30% for inventory and kind of back room. This is your front door, and then you've got all these gondolas here. If the traffic that's gone through your door, you think of what's happened, like online growth has gone up 10%. Anywhere from 10 to 15% is online sales right now, right? And the population of Canada is finite, so you assume that means that if 10 to 15% have gone online, then this physical geographic space now gets 85% of what it used to in traffic, right? And so right away your profit per square foot has gone down, right? Because you're looking at that. So what retailers haven't done up until now, because they've looked at the physical space more of what's the aggregate value of this space, and so they've kind of looked at kind of this box and said, you know what, it's okay because this physical geographic space is worth, I don't know, X number of dollars, real estate dollars, or X number of millions of dollars, or however you figure that out, it'll be fine. But what they're starting to feel is, this 15% online business that they're starting to do, they realize that the profit coming out of this is much higher than they anticipated. Because let's use Home Outfitters. Actually, that's a really good example. So Home Outfitters, I'm going to pick a fictitious number, but let's say your average price point at Home Outfitters is $50, right? And so it's house goods, so you probably make 50% margin on this product, right? But what you subtract out of this margin is things like overhead cost, carrying inventory, right? So because you got to carry it for so long, and so that that ties up your money, which costs you something before you actually come out with, let's say, a 30% margin when you're done. But what they're realizing is this 15% online, I didn't have to carry it anywhere. I could have drop shipped it, or I turned it over much faster, and therefore my entire margin might be 40%. So 10% over a big chunk is a lot of money, right? And so retailers are beginning to realize, like, hey, if I drive them to the online business, I can capture their attention, right? Because they're going to do their research online. I can show them better pictures than I can in store, because I can actually control the perception that they see, and I can offer them all the right dimensions so they can figure out whether it's right for their house. So the only thing that I can't do is showroom them, right? And so that's like, great, I want a chair that I would pick up at Home Outfitters, but I actually physically want to see to make sure it works. Well, that's the only time I want to drive them into the store. So all of a sudden now this space becomes less valuable. What becomes more valuable is driving this online business and then being ready for them. And so you're starting to see that, right? As you're starting to see like a Best Buy say to you, come on, pen, work. Why is my pen not working? There we go. So you're starting to see at Best Buy go, hey, you know what? I used to keep 30% for inventory. I'm going to chew up another 10% now for pickup. And I'm also going to have to use up, maybe another 5% for returns, assuming that's what happens. So all of a sudden now your space, what they're trying to do is rebalance your profit per square foot, because they can drive more profit out of this 10%, because the overhead is cheaper. It's a guaranteed sale. People are going to come in and pick it up when they say they are. And then I'm going to leave less space in here, which means I'm going to keep only the best SKUs, right? And reducing the space means I take out, I subtract some of my overhead, I subtract some of my carry inventory, and then my 50% margin that goes to 30, starts to migrate up, greater than 30, right? And so now you're getting into a place where retailers, you're looking at different retailers' behavior to try and figure out how much of this space do I need. And Home Outfitters, for example, is a good example of a company not working fast enough because they couldn't figure this out. So they decided, we're just going to axe Home Outfitters and get out of the game, because we can't move as fast as these guys, and so we're in trouble. So we're going to get out. This space that you're in now, you're going to see, Best Buy is already doing it. They change it every day. Sports Check is in this space, and doing a very good job of it, I might add. The other ones that are really great at this are, I'm trying to think of the retailers that you guys have as well. Indigo hasn't gone this way. Indigo has actually gone the other way. So Indigo has, instead of taking this 15% for pickup and returns, they've taken this space and they've made it unique space. And so if you look at their unique housewares, it's pretty amazing stuff, and it's all sourced by Indigo for Indigo, so you can't get any of that. So I would put them in here because they've done a unique job of changing the way they go about utilizing their space to try and maximize profit per square foot. So again, a different behavior, and so you're seeing different things. These guys have put up pickup windows. These guys have gone unique. You're watching Walmart put in this space, and then they're trying to crank up the number of pickups, by a significant amount, right? So they're trying to do what Walmart does, which is make it cheaper. They want it cheaper and they want it faster, right? And so they're starting to do this as well. So you're starting to see kind of different behaviors from everybody. I'm trying to think of who else there is. The Bay is in the space, HBC in the Bay, not Home Outfitters. But we talked about this with the HBC group, as they're not doing a very good job of it. They are stuck way back in the UPC and the SKU codes and trying to figure out, just how to keep online and offline together, which may or may not be the right thing to do, but that's what they're trying to do, which isn't really working for them. The other one that's really neat is Amazon itself, right? So Amazon, Amazon purchased Whole Foods, and with the two Amazon groups, we've talked about this as well. What they are trying to do is this 15% of space, they are putting in things like Amazon boxes. And so Amazon boxes for pickup and things like that is how they're trying to drive this profit per square foot. So again, a different behavior for how retailers are going about business, and trying to figure out how to do things differently. And this is what makes this one so interesting yet so convoluted, because everyone is trying to figure out this profit per square foot equation, but do it in different manners. So I think this is going to continue to be a really interesting one. Again, if you're looking, I would urge you to look at Macy's and Kohl's. These two guys, Kohl's has actually come out and said we are reducing our shelf space. We're looking for partners. They were thinking about Aldi's, which is a grocer in the U.S., and they're thinking about partnering with Aldi's. So you have housewares and groceries partner together. And Macy's has put up pop-up shops. In kind of, again, this 15-20% WAG space. And so you're starting to see a real change in those things and how you do them, because everyone knows they've got to be tighter with how they manage their space. The days of being able to kind of do what department stores did, which is kind of like spread out a ton of stuff, and then they were confident that sales would cover over the space, is gone, right? Because margins are starting to thin out and get a lot thinner. So what's changed? Some of the things that have changed along the way that are driving all of these things. I mean, obviously, you guys have been following this process. You understand how all this works. The part that makes all of this so interesting, and I think where you guys are really stressed over finding jobs and things like that. And I would say to you, the reason that I don't feel stressed that you're all going to find jobs. One is because all of this stuff is happening. All of these guys, all of these guys here, they're trying to figure it out, and they don't have all the answers, right? You've seen that from the last couple of presentations. Everybody does it differently. Everyone's trying to figure out what they're trying to do. The other reason that I think that you guys are really well positioned is this 10 to 15% online. We think it's going to grow. We think in the next couple of years it's going to go from 15 to almost 25%. And we think somewhere between 22 and 25 is when things break, like really break. Not the, some stores have gone out of business break, but we think things might break. And where I think you guys really come in is you understand things about the consumer that most of these organizations never understood before, right? Which is where all of this digital stuff comes in, the SEO, the SEM, the social media selling. So if I kind of rewind you a little bit, now is where all that stuff fits in. So you start thinking about, the way the customer has changed what they do and how they think about things. Really positions you well to be part of this kind of new era of things to come. You think of, if we start here, the informed customer. So this stuff isn't new to you, right? So 4 hours a day on their phones, if not more. This is going up every day, so much so that YouTube actually publishes how long you are on the app, because they're worried about people being on the app too long and not doing anything else in their lives. 69% check social media on a regular basis. And like one of the biggest things that they do during the day is to connect with others, which you think, duh, of course, but it actually has an impact on what they do. You know it because you've got a couple of influencers amongst your midst, one of which, Alex, is actually reviewing product and encouraging you to go out and grab products. So all of that changes the customer. I sound old when I say this, but in the old days, it used to be as simple as commercials on TV or on the radio, magazine ads, radio ads, right? And then every now and then you would get a neighbor or friend, friend or a peer, right? Who would recommend product. It was that simple. But now you've got all of those. You've got social media. You've got people researching. You've got reviews. You've got blogs. You've got YouTube videos, unboxing videos. You've got Alex telling you to buy. It's kind of all over the place, right? So the customer today is a very different customer than they were, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. 10 years ago for sure, and even 5 years ago. Which kind of leads us from, this slide. This is slide 1, and then this is slide 2. Is, consumers really ask a lot of questions. They do research. This is way different than it used to be. You never used to have this. There's actually a magazine called Consumer Reports, which used to be one of the key things that people would rely on. So you'd actually have to go out and buy it. And if they didn't have the review you wanted, you actually had to wait till they reviewed it, or you had to go back and look for past episodes where they reviewed things. And that was everything from blenders to, and there was a finite number they could review. But now consumers do a ton of research before they go to the store, before they even start searching for products. So they use the website. They rely heavily on peer reviews, and then face-to-face conversation with the company. Face-to-face is a relative term, so this could be emails, it could be the little live chat button at the bottom. But they do spend some time with the company asking questions, and then they'll go to the competition and also ask the same sort of questions. And so all of these things are kind of part of the research that someone would do in order to, before they ever step online and actually start to buy things. And then this one is so key, and this is the one that nobody gets yet, is 59% of people consult friends and family for purchase decisions. And what you can add in here is, friends could be real friends, or it could be influencer friends. Sorry, Alex, I didn't mean to suggest that you weren't real. I just mean, it's kind of like me asking, one of you guys, or me going out and asking someone who talks about it a lot to find out what they know about it that allows me to decide what it is. But this changes, a lot of things, right? Because you look at what these guys are trying to do, to capitalize on this Squarespace, kind of this 15-20% shift in physical space, and what happens down here, if they can figure it out, actually makes a difference, right? What they do to ask questions, if they can reach these consumers, now they've got a chance to be able to affect that space and drive more traffic. And so it's important, right? The way they go about it matters. What I would actually say to you guys is, that's what you actually want to do, is when you start looking for companies and brands to work for, you're looking for the guys that are trying to figure out actively how to redefine this space and redefine this space. And so, for a ton of you that want to be in that digital marketing space, you want to find someone who's made some really interesting moves, right? Indigo, if you're product sourcing and you want to be in unique products, Indigo's a pretty cool place to be. They do some really cool things to make sure they have a unique shop. If you want like e-commerce and pickup experience, you might want to go here. If you want to figure out how to open up a market and be able to get people to buy more, or to get in a company shop going, then like a shopping basket, then places like Amazon, where they've got leadership and yet they're trying to figure out how to build more out of it, would be a better answer for you. So there's kind of different ways to go about this. That's why, though, I think for you guys, you really, like, here is when you really insert all of that stuff we talked about last semester. Is all of this stuff is why you guys are going to, it might not feel like it right now because you're all applying for jobs, but you're certainly going to figure this out and figure out how to do this and and unlock some of these secrets for some of these guys. The other one that's starting to change, right, is social selling. By the way, I apologize for this. I think it's because my screen record is going, and so as I clip pictures and put them in here, it seems to want to tell me to drag them around, so I'm getting this, so I apologize. But I've tried not to cover too many words. So the other thing that's happening, social selling really shortens the funnel. And so, think of all those companies I just mentioned, if they go to the website first, if they go to, social media, which is gray here, any of these ones that they do first, it increases your profit per square foot. Because, sorry, I got myself all turned around here. Sorry. What it does do, erase. What it does is it increases your the awareness of a buyer. And it also increases your online sale, but it decreases your in-store sale, which decreases your profit per square foot. Right, and so as this gray box, which is your social media number, as that rises, this stuff's going to accelerate, which again, it's just math, right? At some point they have to say, listen, in order to make this number stop dropping, I need to reduce my footprint, so that I've only got the best codes, right? I'll keep going until I find the magic mix of what the number of best codes is, so that I can make sure that I am in that special place, so that I can start to make back my profit per square feet. So that's kind of how it works. I mean, a lot of this is again, it's a culmination of things that we've been talking about, but it really comes back to strategy to figure out, look, what is it that we're after, right? Like, what is it that the company's after? It's a difficult thing to see. A lot of companies have a hard time seeing what the long-term view is on this stuff, and so a lot of times they waffle between, they'll waffle between what they want and the initiatives that they have. Okay, so the last things I'm going to leave you with on this. Next week we're going to get into different tactics, things like click and collect and endless aisles, and what are the different things that you can do to drive different tactics depending on what you're after. Life cycle issues, fraud prevention. There's kind of like a lot of things that sort of tag onto how you go about implementing change to profit per square foot. One of the things that a couple of things that to think about as you go through this. So one of the ones that I would, particularly with Canadian stores is going to be an issue. Sorry, I was just trying to figure out where to put this. Is I would think about, I would think about, come on, pen. There we go. I would think about franchises versus corporate stores. And so I think you guys understand this sufficiently, but if you look at a Canadian Tire as a really great example, at Canadian Tire, what you get is you have a group of, every store is franchised, which means they have the Canadian Tire name on it, but the way the store is run by a single operator. I am Phil, and I'm the Canadian Tire. I own the Canadian Tire. I wish I did, but I don't. Let's say I own the Canadian Tire on Dixie and Dundas, okay, near my house. So I have full operational say over what happens in my store. The only thing is I can't do is break the agreement around what I'm allowed to advertise Canadian Tire with. But Canadian Tire head office can only recommend, recommends what I carry and what I put on sale. And so Canadian Tire, the Canadian Tire franchisee, is going to be highly suspicious of Canadian Tire .ca, because if it doesn't come through my till, how do I know that you're giving me a share of the sales? And so this is going to be a contentious issue. Canadian Tire has this issue. Shoppers Drug Mart, which is now owned by Loblaws, has this issue. No Frills has this issue, which is also owned by Loblaws Group, LCL we call them. No Frills, and I think Zayres. These are all franchises, and so it's different franchises versus corporate. Corporate decides what they want to do. They own all the stores. They send out instructions. You just get her done. Every employee, no matter how high you rank, is an employee, whereas a pharmacist owns Shoppers Drug Mart, and so you can ask them to do things, but you can't tell them to do things. No Frills, Bob's No Frills, Phil's No Frills, Mike's No Frills, right? And Zayres, Bob and Jan's local Zayres, same thing, and Canadian Tire. So all of these are going to have different effects. Most of these guys, if you were to ask franchisees how they feel about their head office, generally that's the sentiment. And so they're going to be highly suspicious of anything online because they don't think they're going to get their fair share. Which is an issue, right? Because it's a fair competitive issue. It's going to be something that they're going to worry about in terms of how you behave and how you move forward. So I would keep an eye on those guys. That's going to be an issue, in terms of moving forward. I think that's probably the biggest one that I would watch out for, because of what happens in the U.S. They don't have as many franchises. They tend to be corporate. For these guys, that's going to be an issue. The other thing that Canadians worry about more probably than that, I think retail people who look at it, like me, I worry about franchises in Canada because a lot of them are in malls. And this has already hit the U.S. malls. Half of them are dead. But franchises inside malls, little franchises in particular, think of like kids' shoe stores, kids' clothing stores. All of those are going to get hit by the online presence. So really worry about their ability to shift gears and be more, because they're not going to have the support from a head office to do it, and they don't have to follow head office's decisions to get anything done. That's the last piece I would leave you. Keep soldiering on. You're all doing great jobs. I am forever impressed every time I come in to see you guys how much composure you have. I'm super excited to see where you all wind up. So herein concludes the lesson for the week. I wish you all a good week, and then I will be back to... No, I will not be back to see you next week. I will be online again. When you get the next lesson, it'll be... I will be... Where will I be? I will be in Florida, speaking at a conference in Florida. But I will be with you in body, mind, and spirit. All right, so I hope you have a wonderful week. Again, send me any questions you have. If you haven't sent me a resume, do it. Send me... For those of you who missed class, I did say to everyone, if you write a recommendation for yourself and send it to me, I will probably edit it and then post it on your behalf. I just don't have time to write 18 recommendations. So I would love it if you wrote your own and then sent it to me so I could edit and post for you. And I think you should ask every professor that you have to do that on your behalf as well. I think it would help you. All right. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.